Darn bees. Where did they come from? We must have disturbed a nest. Someone gave me a fly swatter so I can at least swat a few. I've been stung again. Damn it. Roger, wake up, honey. You're having a bad dream. I finally woke up after almost 30 years together. I was still haunted by that same bee dream. It varied sometimes with other details, but the bees were always present. Over the years, they had changed but never disappeared. Was it the bees again? Zoe asked with a smile. Yes, it was the killer bees, I replied, making us both laugh as we remembered the skit from Saturday Night Live. I got up and took a shower, which always helped after particularly intense dreams. They came almost nightly, ever since my accident at 18, right out of high school. I don't recall the accident itself, but I was in a coma for 2 years. When I woke up, I decided to go to college. My body was scared but healed, and my mind was ready to work. I didn't know where my family was or if I even had one, but it didn't matter. The accident must have been severe, as I was broken and scarred. You could tell I had undergone extensive surgery. I hope I enjoyed life before the accident because I certainly paid a high price. Whatever I did, I didn't want to repeat. Maybe being a bit less excitable and a lot more cautious would be better. Sometimes, boring and quiet can be a good thing. I wanted to be an accountant. I can't remember ever wanting to be in accounting in high school, but now I did. I remember the name of the school, but little else about it. The doctor said it was not unusual. I just want to have a nice life, a loving family, and a house with a pool, and wear brown shorts with black socks and brown loafers. Not really, but you know what I mean. Nondescript is what I wanted, and what I was. Screw the darn bees. They were thick, and I just hated to get stung. We all did. Anyone got another flying swatter? Mine is broken. Hey, you got one. Dan, you got stung too. Someone toss one of those insect bombs out there and see if that will get them away. Dan. That just pissed them off more than ever. Have all of us gotten stung? Where the heck is the beekeeper? Over and over, that has to be the largest fly swatter I have ever seen. Listen to that noise. I bet that gets rid of the darn bees. The dream went on and on. Wake up, Roger, wake up. You are having a bad dream. Zoe, they're getting worse all the time. And I don't know why. I even mentioned them to the doctor, but he says I just have an aversion to bees. I told her we had a son, John, and 2 daughters, Paula and Billy. Nothing much of consequence happened to us. Our lives were boring. We met and married at 20. Well, I was 20. Zoe was 25. When we married, back in the day, there were a number of ways to propose, but I guess mine was one of the standards. You're what? Was what I said, even though I knew that it was in response to the "I'm pregnant" comment of Zoe. We were married in a little church in the town where I was going to school. Everyone she knew was there, and at the reception, it was a low-key affair. Like me, she had no family to speak of, and only her friends were there, but it was a very happy event. When I think about it, I never went back to my hometown. I had moved to go to college, a small Midwestern college with a town attached to it. Zoe grew up there and had all of her friends around. It kept her happy, so I was happy. We moved into the same housing tract with her old friends and settled into a life of marital bliss. So, at 20, I was married and still going to school. The year was 1973. I'm not sure how it happened, but 2 years later, I had a degree in accounting and computer science. Maybe the records were wrong, but I had enough units to get my BA and a BS in only 2 years. I never bothered to ask. I just got my degree and left. If they made a mistake, that was their problem. Why upset the cart with questions? Then I started my career as an accountant, not a glamorous accountant that did all those tax and financial wizardry things and were in the news. No, I was a bean counter of sorts. I audited things. I was a CPA. I went into a place and counted. I was usually alone, and I counted alone. If there were 2 of us, we could agree on a figure, even if it was wrong. If there were two of us, but we counted at different times, and there was never the opportunity to agree, the audit would be accurate. It was boring, and I loved it. No one messed with me, and I could move at my own speed. Goddamn bees again. Where the heck are they all coming from? Stick up your hand, and you can feel them hitting it, and hard too. One actually drew blood. Beekeeper, get your butt over here. Can you do something about these bees? Wow, you are noisy. No, don't help me. Fix the first. We have all been stung pretty bad. The bees will not stop. We must have run into a nest the size of Arizona. Put some of that stuff on the stings. These must be killer bees. What the heck is making that noise? Is that a bird flapping its wings? Is that where all the noise is coming from? That is one large bird. Is it a pterodactyl? Look at that thing. Damn, it is all over us. At least it helps keep the bees away. Damn, stung again. What the heck kind of bird drops hot? Roger, wake up, honey. This one must have been really bad. Take a shower and come back to bed, Zoe said. When they were bad, I needed a shower. I would sweat like crazy, but only during the last part. My scars hurt too. The people in my dreams, I know there were people, but they were ghosts, just shadows and odd shapes moving through. They had no faces, no specific shapes, like smoke or a cloud. 2 years after John was born, we had Paula. Now Paula was extra special. She was my princess. I loved John, but Paula, well, she owned me like her mother did. It would be that way right up until she didn't. I was crazy about the kids, and Zoe too. The kids, I would just go into their room at night and watch them sleep. At times, I would pick them up and just hold them. Playing, you ask? My happiest times were playing with them, helping them learn to walk, to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, and play catch. By buying frilly little dresses for Paula and Billy, watching them grow, hoping they would have more than I had in a happy life too. There were neighborhood barbecues on Saturday where we all get together. Everyone had known everyone else forever. They grew up together and let me into their little group. I liked them all, but there was just something that, well, we all have those feelings. Maybe it was that I knocked Zoe up, and she had to marry me so fast. We had dated a few times, and she was decent enough while having physical relations. I don't really remember about being intimate too much before, but she seemed to be okay. But after we got married, she did not get into it that much. I got some action, but there was no experimentation or rousing nights or days of physical relations. It just did not happen. I just thought that was the way everyone lived. When a woman was pregnant and after the first child, it was not like I did not try, but she always told me no. So physical relations were infrequent, but I had my children to keep me happy and a calm life. I would hear the women talking. Zoe, Roger must be the most boring man in the world. How do you put up with him? I heard one ask. Ladies, Roger is a great husband. Yes, he is boring, but he is the perfect husband. He does not drink or smoke, he does not gamble, and he brings his check home every week. He never chases women, and he loves me and the kids. Roger is perfect, and there are always ways to keep myself entertained. After all, I have all of you. I have some good news. We might be having a new addition to the family, Zoe said. All the women laughed and giggled, and kept up the jokes and good cheer. I was pretty happy myself. Within a month, it was Billy she was pregnant with. We had a big party and invited all of our friends. All the friends had children about the same age, and they tended to congregate together in a pretty close-knit group. They had all grown up together, and now their kids did too. I was the only new one. Everyone would kid me about being boring, and I would just laugh. I did try to stay in shape. I ran. It was boring, and I loved running. I tried to get the kids and my wife and her friend involved, but they just said no. Auditing warehouses and products requires some muscle to move things around and count, and I got plenty of physical exercise without going to a gym. Take your average warehouse full of thousands of things, and then count them all. You begin to understand what I did. I did have some weights at home, and I used them in the basement just to keep in shape some more, but that was about it. Oh, there was school and plays, music lessons, dance lessons, soccer, football, baseball, gymnastics, you name it, and the 3 kids did it. Sometimes all of them, and sometimes just one in one sport or thing, but the 3 of them were always into something. Zoe managed to keep busy as a stay-at-home mom. Is that a pterodactyl? It sure makes a lot of noise, but those darn bees. Beekeeper, get the bees away from us. Everyone has been stung. This is dangerous. Here, you should know if you get stung enough, it can kill you. Not me, the others. They are stung worse. Don't touch me, and I will hit you with my fly swatter. Give the others the bee sting serum. Don't give me any. I will hit you. Now give it to the others now. Dragonflies. Where did they come from? Well, at least they eat the darn bees. Roger, wake up, honey. Take a shower, baby, Zoe said, still half asleep. I did what she said, and came back to bed. I had a headache, and my scars hurt like crazy. I hate bees, I told her. Now I was dreaming of dragonflies and prehistoric birds. I also began to remember snakes and hogs and even dancing. The dreams were getting crazier and crazier. Why can't I remember the accident? I asked the doctor as my wife sat beside me. And those darn dreams. I think the accident memory problem is probably post-traumatic stress. Maybe you will remember, and then maybe not. As for your dreams, I'm not sure, but maybe they have something to do with the accident. No, doctor, I don't know the genus of the pterodactyl. It was a huge flying bird with leather wings. No, I don't know if it was a kolkhoz or a pteranodon. It was a huge reptile with leather wings and a wingspan about the size of a semi-truck. I am an accountant, not a paleontologist. Damn, these doctors ask some stupid questions. The dreams got worse, but thankfully, life was still dull and boring, just like I wanted it. I counted beans, and I came home, and sometimes we had physical relations, but that was less and less as time went on. I guess I was boring there too. Doctor, why would I be dreaming about dragonflies and hogs and snakes now? It is snakes too, and then there is the dancing, I asked. What kind of dancing were you dreaming about? The doctor asked me. Well, it is more like West Side Story, sharks versus jets, I told him. Do you dance with anyone at all? He followed. Well, this is kind of embarrassing, but at times I think I am dancing with others. It is not an erotic kind of dancing, but just holding each other and moving. Looking at my wife, who is holding my hand, I continued. You know, my left hand holding their right hand, my right hand touching them. Or a few times, I am sort of doing a ballroom sort of thing where we twirl around, and I'm holding them by the waist, and he has his hands around my neck. I can't see faces or even real shapes, but I know it's men. It is nothing sexual but just strange, and there are always the bees. Lots of times, there are snakes and hogs and dragonflies, and we are always skidding on something. It is like people say skids, and we start skidding. I tell my wife and the doctor. The doctor has no idea what to do. Is he happy at home? Does he do anything strange? The doctor asks Zoe. No, nothing at all seems to bother him. His problem is the dreams, and he has them almost every night, but other than the dreams, he is doing well. He is the same at home as he has always been all these years. The dreams don't seem to impact him when he is awake, Zoe said. That was the last time I saw a doctor. We still did all the Saturday events. That was the way the neighborhood was. We actually saw members of the group daily. But Saturday, it was everybody. There were about 20 of them, not counting the kids. It was a very close-knit group. We did the school things too. There was the PDA, saving for college, and even weddings. Weddings were expensive. Graduation gifts ate up a lot of money, but we had more than enough. You can make a fair amount of money counting beans. When the family needed something, I was proud to be able to get it for them. Yes, at times, I would have to work overtime and pick up the schedules of others who were off on vacation or just sick. Zoe told me we needed money, and I found a way to earn it for the family. The house was paid for, and we had added on, but never borrowed on it. We had retirement accounts. Well, I did. There were new cars and family vacations too. How do you put up with being married to someone so boring? One of Zoe's friends asked. I managed to find ways to entertain myself. Roger is good to me and is not demanding. I have money, a good home, and a man who loves me like crazy. Life for me is always good. You ladies should be as lucky as me, I heard Zoe say. Then she added, but then again, you are as lucky as me. They all laughed. Really, girls, he will do anything for me and my kids, and that is all I really want, Zoe finished. Time went on and on. We were near our 30-year anniversary. The others have been stung. Beekeeper, help them. Where did all the darn bees come from? Are you raising bees around here? They sting everything they can. Hey, put some of that insect bomb over there. They seem to have a nest there. They seem to be afraid of the pterodactyl. Why would bees be afraid of a bird that has been extinct for 85 million years? Goddamn bees, where are they all coming from? Someone give me another fly swatter. Who else has been stung? Beekeeper, get those pterodactyls to chase the bees. Another crazy dream, but I was used to it now. Hey, Roger, still dancing with any men? Is the bees sting you? Randolph asked. Everyone laughed like crazy about it. I was a little taken aback that Zoe would have mentioned it to anyone, especially dancing with men. My dancing with men. It was something that was supposed to be between us, not us and her friends too. I pulled her over to the side of the road on a drive back to the house. We could have walked, but Zoe liked to drive over that way if there was something they needed. I could just drive out and get it. I did that a lot too. Zoe, why the heck did you mention this to anyone? This is very personal. You betray me and the trust I put in you when you do this, I told her. Zoe laughed at me. Roger, these are our best friends in the world. We do everything together. We see each other every day, and we take vacations together and have meals with each other every day. Roger, why are you being a jerk about this? You are the one dancing with other men, Zoe said. Well, that was how it started. It was the first time I realized that someone else meant more to Zoe than I did. I don't mean the kids, I mean other people. I began to have doubts about us, and then I started to get suspicious. I hated being suspicious. It means that my life is not boring anymore, and I really crave boredom. It took a few months, but I learned everything I wanted to know once I actually started looking and actually paying attention. Had I actually been blind all of these years? When the time was right, I confronted everyone at one of their little get-together events, which I had not been invited to. I went into Robert's house without being invited. In 30 years, I never walked into one of Zoe's friends' house without being invited, but they did it all the time to me. In our house, it was very interesting to say the least. Inside the house was my loving wife, Zoe, her son, John, and her 2 daughters, Paula and Billy, all 20 of the friends. Actually, 19, and Zoe's adult children. Of course, they were all naked, and yes, they were having physical relations like crazy. Well, you finally found out, Robert John Wilson said. Everyone laughed as they looked at me standing there. Come in, Roger, and learn the truth about your boring life, Robert John Wilson added. I believe you know my daughter Billy, Henry William Billy Kraft added. The laughter never stopped. Let me introduce you to Paul's father, Zoe said, but you already know Grant. Paul Collins. Each time there was an introduction, I was informed of a middle name that matched the first name of the child I thought was mine. The middle name was spoken louder than the other part of the name, but I knew the truth before I got there that day. Just barely, the wives were just as bad. They were all having physical relations. My ex-son was married and 30, and his wife was there too. The ex-daughters were there too. Everyone was part of a swinger group, everyone but me. I was boring. Now I knew why my ex-child all started to call me Roger, and not Dad or Father as they did years ago. Zoe said it was just a phase, but I was hurt. Still I let it go. Then, not now. Why, Zoe, why did you do this to me? Why did you steal 30 years of my life? What did I ever do to you to deserve this? I asked. Exasperation was on all of their faces. Roger, you are just boring. And you are a chicken. You have no passion. You can't seem to stand up for yourself. You move through life as if nothing matters at all except the kids and I. Maybe for someone else, that would be enough. But it was not for us. When we were all children, we made a pact to always be together. We all had physical relations for the first time with each other, and kept having physical relations together. There was one more, but he died. So we needed one more man. You were that man that made the group even again. 10 men and 10 women. We thought we could keep you in the dark forever. I don't know how you found out, but it is way too late now. You were kept in the dark for 30 years. You seemed to like it in the dark. Did you really think I wanted the genes of a loser like you to pollute my children? You are nothing, Roger. You have no backbone. There is nothing that you will fight for, nothing you feel passionate about, not even me and the children. But I no longer care. You are bad at physical relations. You do a boring job, and you're not really more than a good supporter who supported me and my children, Zoe said. Zoe, I wanted to have more physical relations. I wanted to do more things, but you kept shutting me down. Heck, I thought you were dead while having physical relations. I see you apparently don't have that problem here. Apparently, I was the only one who does everything. Why not me? Why the heck not have a full physical life with a man you married and who cared for you and your children for 30 years? I asked. Roger, if I did what you wanted, you would have wanted it all the time. Then you would have found out I was having physical relations with my lovers here. Then there would have been the chance you might have been the one to get me pregnant, and I could not take that chance. And that memory thing, those dreams, and those scars, did you really think I would find those attractive? I picked you because I was already pregnant. You did not know about me and my friends, and you were easy. Sleep with you once, claim you were the father. All was well and done. I was not that far along, so you would never figure it out, Zoe said. Is that all I ever was to you? Someone to give you money and support you while you had physical relations with your old friends, and then get your children into this sick life you live. You call me baby and honey, and tell me when I had those dreams, was that all a lie too? I said, don't be such a Roger. I liked you, sort of. I was just being nice when I called you baby and honey. You did not seem to mind, but after a while, well, you just disgusted me with years of those darn dreams and dancing with other men. What the heck were you thinking? You have to be kidding me. Here you are, some crying closet half dancing with men in your stupid dreams, worrying about dragonflies, flying prehistoric birds, snakes, and hogs and beepers. You are a freak. Well, the damage is done, and there is nothing you can do about it. If you divorce me, I will get half of everything, and the home too, because we have been married for so long. You will have to pay me alimony until you die, Zoe added with an evil-looking smile. And your sex buddies, what about them? Were they in on it all along? I wanted to know. Actually, I already knew, but I wanted them to admit it. Roger, they're not my sex buddies. They are my lovers. We have all been in love since we were children. You just can't understand love like that. You don't understand devotion to people you love, Zoe said. Then her lovers answered. You bet we were. You were the perfect dupe. We were happily having physical relations with your wife as you worked away. Then we started having physical relations with your daughters too. Our wives got to have physical relations with your son. Oops, he's not really your son, and they are not your daughters. Once they learned the score, your pretend kids happily join the club. When we went on vacations, there was always someone with you so we could continue to have physical relations, having alone time, holding hands, kissing her hand, and looking longingly into her eyes. Heck, dude, you are just so screwed up. We would have invited you, but you are not really worth the effort. The wives talked about it, and none of them would have had physical relations with you, so you were a no-go from the start and never got any further. This came from all of the men and women too, but in various parts of the discussion. There was more, a lot more, but it is not all worth repeating. It is enough to say that they all disclosed their contempt for me. They're using my money to raise their children, and they're helping each other keep me in the dark. Now that it is out in the open, there is no need to hide anything. Be a good boy and go and clean up the house. I will be back in a few days, and I expect it to be nice and clean, Zoe said. Everyone was laughing at me. Eventually, I had everything I needed, and I left and went home. I still remember the laughter as I walked out of the door without closing it. But as I walked out, I turned to Zoe and said, "You must be proud as you sit there getting screwed, knowing that your son and you get to watch that has been of a high school football hero. Or maybe John Jr. likes to see Paul's father screwing his wife. Hey, John Sr., are your other kids in this bunch? John Jr., does your wife come over when you're not around like your 304 mother does, and screw your father? This is what you gave me up for, betrayed me for. You gave your children away to people who treat you, and now them, as a bucket, or in John's case, a yum toy with a pulse. I bet you actually picked out a mate for John just to make sure you had a person who could become a new permanent sex mate. Zoe, did you or your children ever notice that your sex buddies' kids are not part of this group, and ask yourselves why? I know their wives only had their husbands' children, but you play their 304, and these are the genes you wanted to pass on to your children and grandchildren. You wanted to pass on the genes of people who hate you. Think about this. Your chosen mate killed himself rather than marrying a woman who got pregnant by John. Didn't that give you a clue, you stupid? Yes, I knew he killed himself and why. It was not hard to find out once I started investigating. I'm just happy that I am not part of their precious gene pool, and none of the scum suckers will ever call me father or grandfather. My little pin camera picked it up nicely. It was a good thing I was actually invited to stay. That gave me permission to record everything too. Come back anytime. Cuck, John Sr. said as I was walking out. Bring a few friends next time. Folks, you don't have any friends, do you, Cuck? Apparently, John was right. I did not have any friends, but I did have 6 county marshals, all with papers to serve on everyone except the kids. They gave me permission to let you in. They're all there, I said to the group of law enforcement officers in our county. The marshals serve process for the courts, and they can't be privately retained to do just that. I hired 6 of them to serve everyone at one time and in one place. I told you I was a bean counter. Now let me tell you that the screams of 23 naked people, as half a dozen uniformed, armed marshals entered the place, were deafening. I had to smile as I walked away unhurriedly, shaking my head. The restraining orders would keep everyone away until the dust settled. The divorce was now nasty, and I did not do it in the same town I lived in. I went to the county seat. I went for a fraud annulment, and based on the evidence I got at our little talk, I was able to hit the other friends up for millions. I already had the information, but their confession was all I needed to use in one little bit of dialogue. They all admitted they were in on the fraud from the beginning. That I was specifically targeted was a conspiracy from the beginning, and they admitted how they would keep me busy so that the others could deceive my wife and her daughters. They talked about using me to pay for things for them and their other children. How Zoe took her money to buy things for her intimate friends. They talked themselves out of millions of dollars. All 19 of them did. I got the house, everything inside of it, all of our savings, retirement, everything. The annulment, based on fraud, took care of that. There was no community property. Zoe owed me for raising her deceitful children, as did their parents. Needless to say, the deceitful children were not kind to me either. They hated what I did to their mother and their fathers. But I was not done yet. I was a bean counter, and I knew how many beans make 5. In the end, I got a little over $5 million from all concerned. That was fair after schools, vacations, college, weddings, and 30 years of lies and deceit. They were all in on the conspiracy, so they all got to pay. I did not break them, but I sure as hell put a nice big dent in them. I have to admit that they were still friends, and they all pulled their money to pay everything off, especially after I started filing writs of attachment on everything. I even got an order changing the birth certificates, as the original ones were obtained through fraud. Zoe was required to return my name, but I don't think she really wanted to keep it. The kids lost my name too. I'm not sure what it is now, and I don't care. For my part, I lost their addresses and phone numbers. I also lost 30 years of my adult life. I did not want to live in the house, but I did not really want to sell it. I wanted to destroy it, so a few weeks after the divorce was final, and I had my money, I came back to the old neighborhood, much to their amazement. I had a crew with me to knock the house down. Zoe went nuts, as did the kids. It was my final act of vengeance. The house was worth about $600,000 on the market, and Boring Me had paid it off before I found out what was going on. Zoe wanted it badly, as did the kids. It was where they grew up, and all their intimate friends lived in the same tract. Eventually, they induced me to let it go for $1,100,000. Yes, I jacked up the price, and all the intimate friends bought it. They were smug about it too. I was just as smug. I made an extra $500,000 in 3 days of talking. They agreed to a cash payment and a 5-day escrow. Why would they do that? That was simple. My house was the key. It abutted one property rear to rear, as well as the sides of 2 others. If someone else had bought it, their little games would have been a lot more difficult. Their intimate lives were worth so much to them that they paid a hefty price for it. Before I left, I destroyed every picture, even the ones on the computers. I destroyed every school project sent to Dad or Mom, every Mother's Day card, every Father's Day card, every birthday card, every Christmas card, and every vacation card and picture. Whatever history was in the house was now in the garbage dump or in the burn barrel. When I turned the house over to her, it had all the furniture, my clothes, everything else was there. The refrigerator was full of rotten food, and not a dish had been cleaned since those months before. I did nothing to keep the place up. The yard was a junkyard, too. It had no electricity, gas, or water. Everything was turned off. I was kind enough to repaint, though. I thought that was pretty nice of me. Every wall, ceiling, window, and every piece of woodwork was sprayed with a new coat of dull, boring black paint. Yes, they knew about it when they bought it. It's hard to hide blackout windows. Zoe got the house back and lived there. It became their party house, so their intimate friends would all get a key. Zoe kept the place up and became their personal helper, housekeeper, or whatever. That's what she and the rest of the women were anyway. She never saw it that way, but I sure did. She didn't see that it was only her kids that were part of the group. Even after I told her, she thought it was because they were special, but it was because they were naive enough to believe what their mother told them. It was only her daughters that were part of this for her friends, and her son allowed his wife to be a part of it too. Zoe was never the brightest light in the room. I had quit work and just left. I left everything except the money. I even left my clothes. I left everything that would remind me of that life. I even left things I forgot I had. If they had been important, I wouldn't have forgotten them. I drove all night and stopped at a cheap motel. The next morning, I stopped at Walmart and got some cheap pants, shirts, and new underwear, along with everything else I needed for my trip. I threw away the clothes I was wearing when I left. I wanted nothing to remind me of them or those 30 years. The car was a rental, and I changed cars the next day too. It was the equivalent of stomping the dust off my feet. It's a Bible thing. Look it up. 2 days later, I was in our nation's capital and at the door of the Pentagon. Okay, not really at the door. I went to an annex and filled out an application, giving them the address I was staying at and my new cell phone number. Yes, I had tossed the old one. They used it to track me when I wasn't home. They thought of everything. I found that out during my 2-month investigation. I used that to my advantage. It had call forwarding, and I left it where I wanted them to think I was, giving me free rein to follow them and be where they didn't want me to be. The Doty hired me the next week. It was a strange interview. I was a bean counter, and the Doty has a lot of beans to count, and they're all over the world. I was a CPA and had good auditor references. I gave them my work history and everything else. Despite this, I had a very strange interview. I was asked if I was going to use veteran points to get the job, but I told them about the accident and my being in a coma for 2 years and not actually going into the military during Vietnam. He smiled and excused himself. A few minutes later, he came back with a couple of files and read them to himself as I watched from across the table. Then a man in a Navy uniform came in and took my fingerprints with a computer print device. They looked at the screen and nodded to each other. "Welcome to the Department of Defense, Mr. Phil," the man said to me with a warm, welcoming smile and a handshake. "Is there any place you think you might like to start?" Well, yes, there is. I didn't think I'd be asked where I wanted to go, but to be honest, I'd lived a very sedate and somewhat boring life, and I wanted to experience a little adrenaline rush once in a while. I want to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, wherever I can be most useful, I replied. I don't know why I picked the DOD or asked to work in a war zone, but I did. I had been married in 1973, and it was now 2003, and the war was just beginning. I wanted to do what I had never done. I was tired of being bored. I wanted action, and I wanted to go to war, even if it meant counting supplies. If you pressed me, I think I wanted to die, but I was too cowardly to do it. I think that can be arranged, Mr. Phil, the interviewer said. You sure you wouldn't prefer something more sedate? I told him that sedate was not what I was looking for. They smiled and said it would be as I asked. The Navy man, wearing a funny gold emblem like an eagle holding an anchor, or some such thing, said, "Welcome aboard," and it was over. A few days later, I was fitted with body armor called dragon skin. I had to pay for it myself. It wasn't standard issue, and the troops weren't allowed to use it after a while, but I liked it. Maybe it was the name Dragon. They also sent me to school for weapons training. This part was strange because I was a civilian DoD employee, and all I was going to do was audit assets in the theater of operations. The body armor I could understand. The tactical weapons training was a mystery. When I asked why, I was told, "We think you should." Some soldiers said, "What the heck?" I was no longer living a boring life. I carried twin .45s in my back, so I could pull one out with each hand, and an M16A4. Many of the younger guys liked other weapons, but the M16 felt comfortable in my hand, so I used it. Lots of guys carry a specific kind of blade, but I preferred the standard M9 bayonet. I wasn't Rambo, but I wasn't going to get killed because I couldn't defend myself. They trained me on how to use each weapon, and I surprised myself at how easy it was to learn. My instructors acted like it was expected. No pat on the back there. I first went to Afghanistan. I was one of several people on the team. That was the first time I freaked out. We landed so we could take other transport to our base of operations. From there, we would visit smaller bases or supply points. That was when I heard it. We had just gotten onto our transport when I heard it. The sound of the rotor spinning as the blades cut through the air. Not identical to the dream, but close enough. The chopper was just sitting there when we got on board, but they started it, and after the whine of the jet engines waking up, the sound came. Well, I must have heard it somewhere before. After all, dreams are about what we know, even if it's not about what we do or did. This is my pterodactyl sound. large leather wings cutting through the air. Mystery solved. That's where I heard the sound and used it in my dreams. I must have heard a military helicopter before, somewhere, even if I don't remember it. I thought about the dreams. Yes, I still had them. But now there wasn't some lying woman calling me baby and holding me like she actually cared about me, pretending to want me to feel better. We had a number of bases, if that's what you can call them. If we had assets there, I looked and counted them. I learned a few good lessons right up front. They're not for sale, but you can do a short-term rental. They were the best allies money could buy, but only in the short term. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. If their enemy was our enemy, they could be rented. The dreams continued. Now the smoke people took shapes, and even some form of faces. I was now an old man with children. Well, certainly old, but not quite with children. If you were 30, you were dad to them. If you were 40, Gramps was the term. If you were over 50, you were hey old man. Most of them were babies. Well, some were 18, with children already, but they had a determination to win, to protect the man to the left and right, to follow orders, to move forward or to the side if ordered, but never to retreat. Watching them move in battle formations, maybe a squad or a platoon, or even a company, was like watching a deadly choreographed ballet. They say that when Emperor Tiberius was a soldier, his drills were like bloodless battles, and his battles were bloody drills. That's what our troops in the field were doing, bloody drills that had been done hundreds of times before. The blood didn't change just because there was some blood now. Yes, it was a ballet or dance of death they did, and it was with deadly precision. I wondered how they would feel about it when they grew old, how they would feel knowing that for a brief time in their lives, they had to be civilized people doing uncivilized things. I looked and was pleased that I never saw joy in them when they had to act with deadly force. Still, they were children, and I hoped they would handle it later in life and be the people they wanted to be, not the people they were forced by circumstances to be. The dreams continued. Dragonflies, hogs, snakes, skids, bees, flowers, and pterodactyls. They were all still there. But for some reason, the intensity lessened. Faces appeared on the smoke people. Children's faces, just young children, 18, 19, maybe 20, but children just the same. Not the same children I was with now, but not anyone I ever knew. I counted money, bullets, belts, knives, rockets, pants, socks, boots, bottles of water, even other necessities. We had females in the field, water containers, portable showers, soap, hand cream, you name it, we counted it. Why? We were operating in an area unknown to us, and we needed to know in advance what we would need tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. The figures changed all the time, but the doting needed to be ready and prepared. You realize we don't produce bullets or rockets or jet fuel or anything else. We have to plan to get it, stock it, ship it, and take into consideration accidents that prevent it from getting to the next point. It all has to be ordered in advance too, and usually from the lowest bidder. People talked about no competitive bidding. How many companies on the face of the earth have the assets to rebuild the country and train the locals to keep it running and operational at the same time? Not many. People don't know this, but it was Bill Clinton who got Halliburton on the list for non-competitive bidding on contracts. They were a direct appointment company. I had been in the country for about 4 months when there was a bit of a problem. We were ambushed. Not a big surprise to anyone. I did have guards with me as I moved from place to place. At times, I was allowed to operate on my own. Why send a team when one man can do it in a few days and not create a problem? I don't even remember my GS, but I always had guards with me. It seems to be standard. It wasn't a significant fight except to those of us fighting it. The bullets started flying in great quantities, and then I heard it. I heard the bees as the bullets flew overhead and all around. I heard the buzzing of the bees. We returned fire, and I got into my first firefight. I was surprisingly calm for all the noise and apparent confusion around me. I wasn't the target. I was a target. The soldiers around me moved in their deadly ballet, and I followed, despite being told not to. It was like riding a bicycle. I moved into line. I watched my flanks. I called out when I saw movement to the left that indicated an attempt to flank us, or when the real area of attack was the other flank, and it was a diversion. I followed orders. I called for covering fire and suppressing fire. I responded when others did the same. I watched R6 and covered the men to my right and left. The training paid off. The drills paid off. We moved as one, and in less than 5 minutes, it was over. The enemy just disappeared into the desolate countryside, littered with rocks, boulders, depressions, and caves. After that day, the dreams almost stopped. Within a week, I usually couldn't remember any of the dreams unless I really concentrated. They were all but gone, replaced with the reality of war. I still traveled and counted supplies. I was moving to Iraq for the same reason I went to Afghanistan, to count things. The supply depots got bigger. The number of things to lose track of grew larger, and the number of things to be stolen increased. If we didn't need the supplies, we wouldn't have them. Well, maybe some idiot hit the wrong button or copied a stock number down wrong. Any number of things can go wrong, and they do. I continued to report, picking out things in the theater that weren't needed and reporting on things that were needed but weren't there. I was one of many doing this never-ending job. I was creating a database for continued war. Being part of it wasn't my business, but I was now going on patrols. I told my superiors I needed to see the layout of assets during a routine patrol, but I just wanted to get out of the warehouse. I knew the drill. A dancer can move to the music, even if others don't hear the music, but the dancer does. It was the same on patrol. We all heard the music and moved to it. I was still solitary and didn't talk much, but I watched, made notes, wrote reports, and filled out forms. The Department of Defense loves forms. Now they were on a computer, and they got downloaded into mine, and I uploaded the completed forms to the DoD via satellite. There are diversions, bees everywhere. Some people get stung. I get stung. Nothing bad, just a bee sting, but I let my superiors know. I had been there for over 4 years. I wasn't part of a team. I was a team. Originally, I was part of one. Then I led a small team, and then I was in charge of several teams. Now I had become a team of one. War had become home to me. War was my price for the dreams not coming back. Every minute of every day of my memories of the last 30+ years not coming back and swallowing me into the abyss of melancholy. Evidently, I wasn't supposed to die here, because I was still alive after 4 years and countless firefights. We weren't allowed to call them battles. Being wounded again and again, none of them serious, I was still alive. This resulted in the saving of one life. I am still going in and out of depots and reviewing records, files, documents, and shelves full of things an army needs to operate to fulfill its mission. Okay, it's not just the Army. There's the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Air Force. Everyone is here, playing war games, deadly serious war games. I get no pleasure out of battle or taking life, but I get pleasure from not always having the dreams. That is the price I gladly pay. I am now fully equipped for battle. For some reason, I am not bothered by the brass. A high-ranking DoD employee, a GS whatever I am, rates a lot of difference. One major did start to give me trouble, but soon he was transferred out. I don't know why, but the problem stopped. Even the SEALs treat me well. I don't tell anyone how to do their jobs. I just help when I can. I learn the area, make notes about how much of whatever we need, and then see if we can get it. I have no friends here. I don't try to make any. Friends leave. They go home to wives and children. This is my home. What I have is lots of enemies. The rule comes into play then. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So at times, I have pseudo-friends. I would still die for them. And more importantly, I would kill for them. They are fellow Americans, and I care about them. The faces of the kids change. The mission changes in the news. But on the ground here in the sandbox, it's the same mission it's always been. Break things, make widows and orphans, get home alive. That's the mission. Everything else is just noise. I enter the new depot to confront a new sergeant major, someone who will give me the standard lecture, someone I will have to put in their place. I am tired, just like everyone else. It will have to be done, so I do it. After a while, we will reach an accommodation. It will be simple. Get the hell out of my face. Let me do my job. You do your job, and we will get along. I tell them all of this. The faces change, but it's always the same. I used to waffle about it. Now it just flows out like water from a spigot. I meet Sergeant Major Claw. I lay it out. Get the hell out of my face. Let me do my job. You do your job, and we will get along. Listen, you civilian maggot. The Sergeant Major says, this is my house, my rules, and I say what and when. The Sergeant Major is so close we are like boxers at a weigh-in. I can feel their lips almost touching mine as the Sergeant Major does a head move to the left and right while yelling. Being nose to nose, it is almost expected. It's the equivalent of telling someone to knock a chip off your shoulder. Don't give me that military talk, Sergeant Major. My jurisdiction is right here, wherever I want to be. Whatever you have in this place is mine to monitor, count, and observe. I move closer as I yell, so our lips actually touch as we yell. It's electric, cosmic, the Big Bang for me. Listen, maggot, the Sergeant Major says, you don't touch, you don't look, you don't even breathe on my stuff until you ask and I give you permission. And then, only if I want to. The Sergeant Major turns to walk back to what passes for an office in a war zone supply depot. She turns and looks at me. You got a problem. Get your butt out of my depot. She turns back and heads for her office, mumbling something about maggot civilians and her depot, shaking her head back and forth. Her posture is perfect, and at 5'5" tall, her hair is short, straight, and glossy black. I guess she weighs about 130 ills. Not too heavy for a soldier. Age. I'd say she's about 45, 10 years my junior. I peg her as an American Indian, a feather Indian, not a dot Indian. I get the hell out of the area. Any other Sergeant Major and I would have been down his throat. Unfortunately, what I wanted to put down her throat would be illegal unless she agreed, and even then, half the countries of the world would imprison us for it. I did what any self-respecting quasi-soldier would do. I found a patrol and went out. Meanwhile, Sergeant Major Claw introduces herself. My name is Sergeant Major Jai Claw. When I was born, I grabbed onto my grandfather's fingers so hard, he called it an iron grip. So I became J Claw, at least of him. My parents thought Jen would work better, but grandfather would forever call me Iron Claw. I am a northern Blackfoot. It was lucky I was born in the part of our range that is in the United States. I am full-blooded Blackfoot. My father's name was Claw for the bear claw you get for bravery. He had been young, with pink skin to match that of my mother. He was not a warrior and did not follow the old ways, and neither did my mother. I don't know if that was the reason, but within a month of my getting out of the hospital, they drove off, leaving me with my grandparents, and just kept driving until they ended up at the bottom of a ravine. No one is sure why they went there, but tire tracks seem to indicate some slight disturbance in the grass. My grandparents raised me. Grandfather taught me the old ways. There aren't many of us left, but we have a large number in Montana. My grandfather was a warrior. His body bore the scars of World War I. He lied about his age so he could make the D-Day invasion. He was in Korea and Vietnam. He bore his scars with pride. Grandmother could be seen lovingly touching them and looking with pride at the other women. Grandmother has a warrior for a mate. I became a warrior at 18. I went into the army and went into places no woman should go. I was in Kosovo, in Montenegro. I fought hard and got stripe after stripe. I never had to sleep with anyone to get promoted. While in the Army, I went to college. I ended up with a master's in warehouse management. Yes, there is a science to it, and a wrong way to do it. If you don't already know that, then you are not someone to tell me how to do my job. I was proud of my American Indian heritage. I am proud of my heritage. This proud Blackfoot woman is not going to let him get the best of me. I am no ghost-dancing fool to let myself get shot and not fight back. Meanwhile, I was back that evening and went into the depot. And who do you think was there? Sergeant Major Claw. She had a bed set up and was sacked out in full battle uniform. She was up and at me like I was the enemy. In her hand was her .45, just like mine, a model 1911 .45. Easy, SGM. I'm just making sure the depot is secure before I turn in. I stay here every night now. I can check that off my list. This is a first for me. A depot under constant observation, not by some PFC, but the NCOIC herself. I lied. I wanted her like I'd never wanted anything. I had a small room inside the depot itself, and I headed for it. She just looked at me as I walked away. This was a major depot compared to the others in the area, but definitely not the biggest. It had some lieutenant colonel someplace, but I never saw her. But I wasn't there all the time. My life with Sergeant Major Claw is head-to-head, waiting to see which one of us gets a headache first and can't play anymore. The fights go on every time we meet. It is fortunate there are no duels allowed. I would be dead already. She would challenge me, I would accept, and I wouldn't lift a finger, except to protect her. I would die rather than hurt her. I moved through the warehouse, looking at everything, making notes, counting, going over the computer records, looking at the sign-out sheets, making sure nothing leaves unless it's supposed to. Watching procedures to supply troops in the outlying areas. Transport methods. Was the paperwork correct? Did they have emergency distribution systems in place in case they had to bypass the system? You don't want soldiers in the field, in battle, and demand paperwork to resupply them. But you would want to know what was going, what was left, and why. I moved from one depot to another, but always came back to SGM Claw, as it was my base of operations. Meanwhile, Sergeant Major Claw reflects. That old man does nothing but piss me off. Why the Army allows him to be here is beyond me. Some stupid civilian who has nothing to do but pretend to be a soldier and maybe get a real soldier killed. There are patrols and firefights and blood in the sand. There are bees and stings, just like the dreams. Many things are like the dreams, but not the same. Now we have snakes, but they are cobras. And there are hogs too, but war hogs. When the dream started, there were no warthogs, but now there are. That old man is back. I've checked him out. Once, an Army major raised hell about him being out on patrol with the men. The major was reassigned to a desk job in the Pentagon. His dreams of promotion to lieutenant colonel and then colonel were dashed. He will retire a major. That old man has something going for him. Even the damn SEALs treat him with respect. I can't find out why, but I keep looking. My life is the Army. I've had relationships, but I've been looking for my warrior, just like grandmother found hers. But grandfather tells me I'll never find him. I tell him of my wish for children, and he smiles and says there will be children. How can there be children if I can't find a warrior to be my mate? I ask him. He just smiles and says nothing. Sometimes that damn Indian enigmatic stuff just pisses me off. Now that time has passed for me at 45. I am too old to find a mate, much less a warrior like grandfather. He sits around with his lifelong friends, fellow warriors, with his shirt off. His scars show the battles he fought and won. Victory is measured by being alive after a battle and being wounded. Warriors like him no longer exist, at least not for me. Yes, there are younger ones here and elsewhere, but I am too old for them, and they are too young for me. I guess grandfather was wrong about this. As my change has taken place, children will not come now. My dreams are full of the sergeant major the man of dreams, filling my head. Roger says to himself, "That old man is back, but different. He has the look." I heard it was a bad trip, and that things went poorly for a group of young soldiers. I also heard that he managed to save a few. I don't know why, but I looked to see if he is well. It is late. The depot is closed up unless there's an emergency. He walks past me, dropping his web gear but keeping his weapon. He strips off as he heads for the decontamination shower. We use it for ourselves. His weapons go in with him. 2 .45s, an M16, and his M9. He sets them down and stands under the water. I see his body. He is scared. Old scars, new ones. This is not an accountant's body. This is not a bean counter's body. I don't care what he has told others about a car accident. I know scars. I've seen them all my life. These are not from an auto accident. These are battle scars. These are scars that are only found on a warrior's body. He washes his short gray hair. Nothing vain in that. He doesn't try to look young. It's his hands. He keeps washing and looking at them. That, too, is something I've seen before. He sees what isn't there, but will never wash off. He sees blood. It doesn't matter that no one else can see it. What matters is that he sees it. He takes his M9 out of the scabbard, and I watch the blood wash away from the blade and handle. There is no pleasure in his eyes. He doesn't even seem to notice that I am standing there, looking at his body. He turns and looks at me, almost as if he didn't know I was there. But then I realize he knows everything that moves around him. He looks into my eyes and sees my fear. I am afraid, and he knows it. I would like to say it was romantic love, but it was not. The steel blade, forgotten, lay at my side. Trust. He trusted me, but I am pierced by a lance that goes not just into my body but my soul as well. My warrior has found me. Meanwhile, Roger reflects. SGM Claude looks at me. Long story short version. My ex was a betrayer for me, but a companion for 18 others while we were married, and for another 10 years before we married. 3 kids, none of them mine. I didn't know, and when I did, I divorced her. 4 years since the divorce, and I've never even gotten excited about anything until I met you. I told her. She looked down at me, then smiled. Then you should be more than ready for a second time, she said, smiling up at me. I was amazed at what I saw. I had seen Zoe with her companions, and they never had that look. I saw desire with them, but not what I saw with Jen. I saw love in her eyes and playfulness too. Come now, my gray-haired war stallion, make love to me. I haven't been called many things in my life, but never a stallion. It was lovingly said and meant that way. Her skin bore the ravages of age and some battle scars, but to me it was perfection. We touched. She turned her face, and we kissed, and I found myself lost in the pleasure of her passion. I hope she saw the love in my eyes that I saw in hers. She kissed me in great haste, not caring about where my lips had been. I love you, I said. I expect you do, and if you ever stop, I will scalp you for real, my great stallion, she said back. This was a dream come true for me. This was what I wanted that first day. This was what I wanted all my life. I now understood the name Iron Claw. She had them. I would have more scars made by her claws. Meanwhile, Sergeant Major Claw says, I called grandfather and told him what had happened, that I had found a warrior. I told grandfather all about Roger, but only after he gave me permission. Roger, you have told me all about your life with Zoe and your accident and your dreams, but some I don't understand. My grandfather, who raised me, understands dreams better than anyone I know. Even the Bible talks about some having the ability to read dreams. May I tell my grandfather and see what he says? I need to tell him about us anyway, but I will only talk about the dreams if you permit it, Jen said. This was the first time anyone who knew of my dreams asked permission to talk to someone about them before. It was just done. Meanwhile, SGM Claw continued. Yes, If he can help, then good for him. I don't have them all that much anymore, but I would like to know what they mean. I told my love. So, grandfather, what do you think they mean? And what about his scars and his thinking they came from an auto accident when I can tell they didn't? Jin's grandfather says, his spirit is troubled, but you are helping him. He is the warrior you were looking for, but never found. He found you and took you without knowing it. He took you in the old way, by fighting, and then claiming you as his prize. Everything will come to pass that is supposed to come to pass. Concern yourself no more about this. There are times, grandfather, that I wish I never taught you about Skype. You still drive me crazy with that mystic stuff you tell me. I wouldn't believe a word you say were it not that what you say always comes to pass. This got a laugh out of grandfather. Now let me talk to my grandmother so she can learn the good news directly from me. Grandmother says, I am here and hear it all. You will make me a great-grandmother soon, and I hope you will not keep my great-grandchild too far away from us. Now Roger reflects. The conversation went on for a while, as such things do, and would continue every few days from that time on. We, the Sergeant Major and I, were lovers. I called her the Sergeant Major when I spoke of her, which was often. She marveled at my scars, and said they were beautiful. I was no pink-skinned child, and she wanted me just as I was. We had our jobs to do, and we did them. I didn't neglect anything. And when the day was over, there was always more work, but always time for us, even in a war zone. It was 3 months into our affair of the heart. She asked and knew all about my life, and I about hers. I was still amazed that she didn't find my accident scars ugly and would gently and tenderly finger them and kiss them. Sergeant Major Jen Claw, U.S. Army, was the love of my life. Then it all came to an end. It was early in the morning. It was nothing special. She was outside, and I was in the depot, checking in a new shipment when the shooting started. I was always armed, and I ran outside to see a chopper coming down hard. You could tell it had been hit, as the rotor was disabled, probably a shot to the engine. However it happened, it had been hit. About 100 or more insurgents were on the attack. Evidently, the chopper was hit as an unplanned target of opportunity, as there were no scheduled flights into or out of the base. There were a lot of birds in the sky. I sure as hell didn't know why. Jin was running toward the chopper, firing her .45 as she went. I saw her drop one magazine and put in another. She was heading for the middle of the invading horde. I ran in her direction, shooting as many as I could. They had apparently caught us flat-footed between mess time and the changing of the guard. There was a small window of opportunity, and they found it and took it. It didn't always happen, but when it did, they were ready and attacked. There were a few of us there, but not enough. If we could slow them down, the others would respond quickly. We had not minutes, but seconds. I saw Jen fall. I saw the bullet hit her and watched as it lifted her up and threw her back. I headed for her. Nothing else mattered. My anger was boundless. I only cared that my Jin was down, and I was going to avenge her. I reached her in less than 5 seconds. She had fallen back on the secure side of a small berm. They had been digging trenches, and there were berms all over the area because they didn't want to actually make a hill that groups of people could hide behind. It was good thinking. I dropped to one knee, still firing, and checked Jin. She was alive. The vest must have slowed the bullet down, but she was going to hurt. Handing her one of my .45s and an ammo pouch full of magazines, hers was gone someplace after she was hit. I told her, kill anything that comes over that berm, even if you think it might be me, because it won't be. I ran toward the enemy, firing at one until they fell, then changing targets. The only thing I cared about was Jin and saving her. I would either stop them or split them up. Either way, Jin would live. By this time, our forces were moving in my direction. The enemy was falling fast, but one man was getting closer and closer. He shot me with a pistol, but it only slowed me down. I was running on anger. How dare anyone try to hurt my gin? My M16 was out. My 45 was out. I went for the M9. He and I met in our dance to the death. My left hand grabbed his right. Something was in it. I felt his body impact with mine. It was hard and lumpy. He was a bomb. I had to stop him from going into detonation mode. I held his right hand closed around the device. It was a dead man's switch, or at least I hoped it was. It would blow up when he let it go. I sure as hell hoped it wouldn't blow up if I squeezed it close. I was lucky it didn't blow from my pressure. The men from the helicopter were getting closer, and my dancing partner tried to move off in that direction. I remembered this dance. I knew the moves. With my left hand on his right, we waltzed to his death. My right hand came up and caught him under the chin. The blade of my M9 entered the soft skin and disappeared into his brain through his lower jaw area. His eyes opened wide. He looked into my face and saw his own death. It didn't faze him. He was prepared to die. He wanted to die. A few more inches, and I saw the light in his eyes go out. My forward movement allowed me to lift him up with my blade now in his brain. I ran forward and fell just before I reached the trench. Rolling our bodies allowed his to fall into the trench as I held his right hand in mine. Bullets tore into my side, and I released my dead captive to fall into the trench. As I did, there was a loud explosion. I felt more pain in my sides, and then it was dark and calm. Damn it, where are the bees coming from? LT, stay down, you hear me? Bullets are everywhere. We're getting hit from every side. We sure as hell stepped into it this time. Fleiswater, I need a Fleiswater. More ammo. Someone tossed me a bandolier. Johnson, Roberts, you're with me. You other guys, watch that left flank. Suppressing fire to the left flank. Williams, Lieutenant, you're not going anyplace. Wait here and fire at anything that comes from the right. Someone hit that tree line. Oops, that made them mad. Hit them again. We have Cobras inbound. Less than 2 minutes out. Pop smoke. Let them know where we are. Johnson, Roberts, blades only. Hit them fast and quietly. Let's turn them that way. Kill anything that moves. No prisoners. No help if they're down. Make sure they're dead. Be silent and let them see us pop up from nowhere. Kill fast and disappear. Stay low until you can kill someone. Bees all around, bullets flying everywhere. Our 223s sound different than the 7.62s from an AK. It's only a bee sting. Kill that son of a... Cut his throat and put the blade into the back of his neck. Johnson, to your left. Your other left. Johnson. Johnson, you jack off with your right hand. The other one is your left. Quit laughing. Johnson, you're going to get yourself killed. Roberts, what the hell is Johnson making all that noise about? He's laughing, Sergeant Major. He says he jacks off with his left hand. Okay, idiots, back to our lines. Charlie's upset and worried. They didn't hear us, but they see the dead. It slows them down. Lieutenant, we got time. Cobras are firing. Cover your necks. That hot brass will burn you. Cover the wounded. If they can't, slick inbound. Repeat, slick inbound. Get ready to move. Watch each other. Wilson, grab Johnson and drag his sorry butt back here. Don't you die on me. You fight it. Don't you dare die on me, or I'll find you in hell and kick your butt every new day for eternity. Don't you die on me. Now you know why you need to know left and right. Yeah, it's a ticket home, you jackass. Just hope you don't get wrapped in a body bag. Quit laughing. Johnson, you moron. Beekeeper. Medic. Medic, get your butt over here. Not me, Johnson. Take care of Johnson. Hit them with a bloop bloop. M79 grenade launcher in the tree lines. We need a secure landing zone. Let's move toward the landing zone. Carry anyone you can. Drag them if you can't carry them. No one is left behind, even if they're dead. You dead morons, get your butts up and start helping with carrying the wounded. Once I'm going to move into the bush for a minute or two, I'll use a few eggs. They'll never know it's me until it's too late. They won't hear the M16. They'll hear their own weapons. Try not to kill me, thinking it's them. When in doubt, shoot. I'll take care of myself. Watch the LT. Stay low. Keep down in the smoke. Charlie can see it just like the slicks and cobras can. Beekeeper, beekeeper, get your butt over here. My men are stung. Move it, medic. Help the others first. Too damn many of us are shot. Not me. The others. Do the others first. Don't let them bleed to death while you mess around. Okay, LT. Okay, you'll be the last one off the field. Yes, I promise. Come on. Time to dance. Put your arms around me. I got you. Don't worry about the bees. They can't sting you. I'm between you and them. Yes, I got them all off the field. Your first battle. And you didn't lose a single man. Your command is shot to hell. But any battle you survive is okay. You're going to have to learn to write those letters some other time. Not today. Not today. Dragon Fleet is inbound. Stay down. The hogs are right behind them. How the hell did you squids get your butts caught here? Come on, LT. Stay with me. The chief is down, but not out. Stay with me, damn it. Not me, the lieutenant. I'll put a bullet in you if you do anything but save the lieutenant. A court-martial won't do you much good if you're dead. It was jumbled and out of sequence and order, but it was all there. Everything was there. Even the dancing. It was there. It happened. It happened. Come on, baby, it's okay. You okay? Come on, baby, stay with me. Stay with us. I want it all. I'm greedy, not just the money. I want it all. Come back to me. Who the hell said that? Not that cheating woman, Zoe. No, it's someone else. I love her. Someone else. Baby's crying. Someone else. Roger thought. Come back, baby. It'll be okay. You were doing fine. Come back to us. Who the hell was talking to me? Roger thought. I woke up to the light. Jin was there with me. Hi, Jin. I remember it all. Everything. Snakes, hogs, bees, hell, everything. Maybe not in sequence, but everything is there. I did all this before, didn't I? Yes, baby, you sure did, Jen answered. My brave stallion is a warhorse. Then I saw the ring on her finger. Jen, are you married? How long have I been out? You were out just a little over a year, and yes, I'm married. I didn't feel like saying it, but I did. Good for you. You deserve a good man to spend your life with. Is he in the army? Yes, he is, Roger, she said with a smile. He's a command sergeant major, and he's a hero too, she replied. Just then, an officer comes in. Sergeant Major, how are you feeling today? He asks. I didn't respond, waiting for Jin to respond, and he tapped my foot. I asked how you're feeling today. I'm feeling better, I guess. Have we done this before? I finally answered. Yes, we have. You tend to come in and out. You talk for a while, and then you go out and come back, he said. Looking into my eyes, he said, it looks like you're doing better. Your body is healed. You've been with us for a year, and all the holes are patched up. No more leaks, he added with a smile. Looking at Jin, he asked, does he know anything? He doesn't have a clue, she said. I should go slow, but I think I need to just dump it on him. I hear the sound of babies. Jane goes over and picks up not one but two babies, one in each arm. I see them, and my heart aches. They are just so beautiful. How old? I ask. 3 months, she says. This is Roger Jr., and this is Edna. They're fraternal twins. They're yours, actually. They're ours. I must have gotten pregnant within a few days of the attack. I didn't think I could have children anymore. And yes, I am married to an army sergeant major, and he's a hero. I'm married to you, and will be until the day you die, she added. And I found your will, And I don't want your inheritance after you die. I want it all now. But you have to be there with me, or I don't want any of it, Jen Claw said with a smile. Then she put a baby in each arm, and I just looked at them. I had a lot of questions, but not now. Not now. I just wanted to look at my wife and our children. They were beautiful. Just beautiful. I'll get a DNA test for you, Jen said. I don't need it. I already know, I told her. Then I felt it on my hand. Jen smiled and looked where I did. There, on my left hand, was a simple gold band. I thought, how did we get married, and when? In my arms were my 2 children, and at my side was my wife. How could life get any better? 6 months later, they were all at Zoe's house for a Saturday get-together. There were the 19 original members and John Jr., Paula and Bill, along with John Jr.'s wife. The group was still at 23, but only Zoe's kids were part of it. The other 19 never had their children there, except for those conceived with Zoe. Even then, they were just someone for the original group to have relationships with. They were watching the big screen as they fixed food and began to get ready for the weekly activity they always had. Oh, there were others, but this was a regular Saturday thing where everyone came. On the TV came the announcer, talking about the President of the United States going to award the Medal of Honor to Command Sergeant Major Roger Phil. At the mention of the name, many of the 23 began to listen. Up until then, it was just background noise. They can't possibly be talking about our Roger Phil. He wasn't in the Army, John Sr. said. John was the big high school football hero. It always irked him when someone he knew was bigger or better at anything. Then a picture of Roger Phil in an Army uniform appeared, wearing the stripes, star, and wreath of a command sergeant major. 3 chevrons up, 3 down, with a star in the center and a wreath after the star. His chest was full of medals, and he was smiling, a real happy smile. The next picture was of him with 2 children and a pregnant woman, also a sergeant major in the Army. Roger did not look bored or boring anymore. The 23 were stunned into silence. The announcer spoke. We have with us today General Hannigan of the United States Army and Admiral Wilson of the United States Navy, both retired. Before the President of the United States presents the Medal of Honor to Command Sergeant Major Phil, we have the privilege of speaking with 2 officers who spent time with the Sergeant Major in Vietnam. Vietnam? Zoe said. The announcer asked, Gentlemen, I understand both of you served with Command Sergeant Major Phil in Vietnam. Tell us about it. General Hannigan began. I served with Sergeant Phil when I was a 2nd lieutenant in Vietnam. Sergeant Phil was on his 2nd tour, and I had the honor of being his platoon leader. The platoon sergeant should have been an E7, but Phil had the position while waiting for his staff sergeant stripes, which came a few days later. Funny thing, he always had some book with him. I asked him about it, and he said the Army let him take classes for free, and he was going to take all he could. He said he wanted to be an accountant. Well, things were turning to chaos in the field pretty fast by then. Congress was about to cut off funding for Vietnam, and we were moving people all over, from company to company and brigade to brigade, even major commands. So I ended up with a small platoon, actually 3 6-man squads. While most companies had 200 men, a LRRP company, actually spelled LRR, had 3 platoons of 18 men each. I had just gotten out of the 5th Special Forces Recondo School in Nha Trang, Vietnam. Man, did I think I was something by then. We were all Rangers assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment. Anyway, the war was in its last year, but we were still fighting, even if most of it was a rear-guard action. There were 18 of us on a long-range reconnaissance patrol, LRRP. We didn't usually go out in such a big number, but this time we did. We were deep in the bush when we heard bees swarming. Phil always called them bees. That was the sound he heard when bullets started flying all around you. Other people called them different things, but Phil called them bees because they not only buzzed but stung you too. Well, we were deep in the bush when we got hit. Apparently, the NVA was pretty close in. And that's who we were scouting for. But we never expected them to be there in force, looking for us. Maybe someone at base camp, a cleanup worker or someone, tipped them off. At least we could radio in that the enemy had been located and in strength. There was always a bounty on Americans, even at the end of the war. The firefight lasted over an hour. I was shot, and Phil took command. He ordered one of the men to use the M79 grenade launcher and hit them hard around a specific location. We poured what we had into the area, but it didn't do any good. They kept coming. Phil said it was like we had stirred up a beehive. Eventually, we were running low on ammunition. Phil and a few others went hand-to-hand with those that got close. He gave us his ammunition and went for the blade. Phil was always good with a knife. I saw Staff Sergeant Phil with one NVA. They both had knives. Whoever was on the other side must have been having the same problems and was using blades like us. This chess game wasn't good. There weren't enough of us to trade them one for one. Phil held the NVA soldier's knife hand with his left and struck with his own blade in his right. He killed one man and then another. Before it ended, he had actually killed 3 of them. Phil never faltered. He told us his job was to get us home, not himself. He was deadly with a blade, even wounded out there in no man's land. Later, I told him it reminded me of that movie West Side Story where the Jets and the Sharks were fighting. Phil had 2 men with him, and that black humor took over. They ended up laughing in the middle of the battle. That was Phil. He could break the tension and still keep you focused. He would even smile, but it wasn't real, more like a bad actor trying to convey emotion. You knew it was fake, but he tried. We put out a call, and soon help arrived. The first to arrive were the little Cessna A-37s. They're small jet trainers, but were now equipped for battle and armed with bombs and miniguns. The Army called them combat dragons. Pilots called them super tweets, but we called them dragonflies. They didn't have much range, but they got in fast and gave us time. It slowed down the NVA reinforcements. Then the Cobras came in and lit the jungle up. There must have been a dozen of them making runs until the Slicks arrived. A Cobra is a Huey with electric miniguns, like in the movie Predator, with lots of firepower. A Slick is an unarmed Huey. Actually, a Huey one, but we called them Hueys. A Cobra minigun can shoot 4,000 rounds a minute from each gun, still using the larger 7.62 NATO rounds. It's built on the old Vulcan principle, but with smaller rounds. The principle is simple. It's a Gatling gun with lots of ammunition and an electric motor. It never overheats. At 4,000 rounds a minute, a Cobra carries 2 miniguns, plus anything else we could strap on. You get 8,000 rounds a minute out of one Cobra, and a few of them up there. And it literally rains hot brass down on you. You have to cover up or get burned. A Slick is for transport, and we sure needed it. Despite being wounded, Phil got the men moving to the Slicks. I ordered him to let me go last. During this time, the Cobras had backed off, but the firing started again. So Phil took a few AK-47s from the enemy dead in the field, returned fire, and actually attacked the NVA advance groups trying to cut us off and take down a few Slicks at the same time. It was dangerous for everyone. Phil continued his attack until almost everyone could board. He was hit twice doing this, but he provided enough firepower to slow them down. They were too close for the Cobras to help. Then Phil came and got me. He had to pick me up by the waist, holding my web gear, and I had my arms around his neck with what little strength I had left, so I wouldn't fall over backward. I was bleeding out. He was about 5'9", and I doubt if he was more than 125 pounds, but he carried me to the Slick. You have to remember, he was wounded then too. He stood on the skid and dropped me a little until my feet touched the ground. "Sir, all of your men are accounted for and are already on board. You may now leave the field," he said to me, and then he literally tossed me on board while still standing on the skid. He told me, "Now you can say you were the last man on the field. That was Phil for you." He took care of his men and me. He knew it was important for an officer to be the last man to leave the field of battle, but only after all of his men were off the field. I recommended him for the Medal of Honor. He saved us all. I later learned that he got the Silver Star. He saved all of our lives that day. I'm glad he finally got the medal. I tried to find him later to thank him, but he was in the field. His wounds weren't serious enough to get him a ticket home, though he didn't want one. I kept looking for him, and then I learned he got out. No one knew where he went. He had the look. You see it every once in a while. Some men get it when they get orders, or when a patrol starts, or when the shooting starts. Some never get it. Every man is different. Some lose the look when the fighting is over, and some take a week to lose it. They're in a special place, a place where civilized men hide when they have to do uncivilized things like kill other men. Sometimes it's in the hot blood of battle, and sometimes it's in cold blood before a battle starts, when you're moving in to take out sentries or other observers. I was with Phil for more than a month. He never lost that look. He was always someplace else, but the warrior was always there for everyone to see. The warrior was always ready to react. It's been over 30 years, and I see the look is finally gone when he holds his children or looks at his wife. It's good to see him happy. By this time, Zoe and her companions, along with her 3 children, sat in stunned silence, watching the television. The Admiral spoke. My time with the Sergeant Major was not much different than it was with the General. I had just made First Lieutenant, which would be a captain in the Army or Marines. I was operating a SEAL team that wasn't supposed to be there officially. We had removed all active platoons in December 1971, but we still had advisors there until March of 1973. My team was part of those advisors. The area we were operating in overlapped with some Army LRRP areas. During 1 month, we got pretty friendly with a young staff sergeant named Phil. We did the usual banter about him being an Army guy, and us being SEALs. We even got into some good fights together, not with each other, but with the enemy. It was the last one that almost killed us all. 10 minutes into a fight we weren't supposed to be in, we were getting ambushed and flanked. There are times when sheer numbers take control, and this was one of those times. Phil just showed up. He was like that. This was part of his area, and he patrolled it like a cop on the beat. He came in heavy, and you would have thought he was a full company or platoon, but it was just him. He made a hell of a lot of noise. I went down, and so did my chief, and strangely enough, that left Phil as the senior man. Everyone knew him, so it was natural. He moved the men around, stopped a flanking movement, and led an assault against a weak flank of the enemy. The speed of Phil's movements scared the hell out of the enemy. They must have thought they had run into a full company. In the end, we were all shot to pieces, bullets flying everywhere, and Phil kept talking about the damn bees swarming. He was like that. He was making jokes but without smiling. I never saw him smile or joke with anyone outside of combat, but during combat, he seemed to calm down, more like deadly calm. He would make you concentrate by saying something funny, but he was deadly serious. He even made a joke or two, but I had the feeling it was just to calm the rest of us down enough to do our jobs and get home safe. It was a replay of what the General said. This time, when the slicks arrived, Command Sergeant Major Phil was going to be treated first. He threatened to shoot the medic if he treated him before everyone else. We were lucky that we were in the I Corps area, and the 1st Cavalry was close and fully armed. They had been ready for a different mission, so they just moved to us. The Dragonflies came first, followed by the Hogs and then the Cobras. The Slicks were close behind. Phil was shot to hell that time. He dragged me to the Slick, and we were the last men to leave. He picked me up and literally ran, keeping his body between me and the enemy firing at us from behind. Like with the General, he made sure my boots were the last ones in the mud. For an officer to be the first on the field and the last to leave is a big deal. Phil made sure that happened for me. He told me he was really tired of it all, and wanted nothing more than to go home, fall in love, get married, have a bunch of kids, and be the most boring man in the world. He had enough excitement to last a lifetime. He intended to forget he was ever in the Army or Vietnam, or that he had ever killed anyone. It wasn't even going to be a memory for him. Well, about 3 months later, Phil and I crossed paths again. Like the general, I recommended him for the Medal of Honor. 3 months later, we were standing in the Pentagon when the Secretary of the Navy awarded him the Navy Cross. Funny that an Army man got the Navy Cross, but he was fighting with Navy men, and I was the officer who recommended him for it. It was Navy men he saved, so he got it. Phil was quiet but respectful. I would have thought he would have been more, well, happy. I sure as hell would have been happy getting the Navy Cross. It's only one step below the Medal of Honor. Phil never even smiled, except when they wanted to take his picture, and they told him to smile. Somber was his mood. Yes, somber. It was his last day in the military. When the ceremony was over, Phil was dismissed. He could have stayed and been a big hero to everyone, but he just left. Before he left, I took off my Navy SEAL badge and handed it to him. He didn't say a word, but he sort of smiled and nodded, and then he disappeared. I saw him a few hours later, waiting at a bus stop by the Pentagon, dressed in civilian clothes, a pair of Levi's and a long-sleeved tan shirt. I stopped, smiled, and asked him if he wanted a ride. Sure, he said, as if I were a stranger, not the man whose life he had saved. Where you going, Phil? I asked. How did you know my name? He replied. I was surprised, but I remembered what he said and decided to play along. It's written on your duffel bag, I said. He looked over and shrugged. Where you headed? I asked. Greyhound or Trailways, either of them. I'm going to college out west, Phil said. Which college? I asked, just to get him to talk. One out west was all I could get out of him. We drove in silence until we got to Greyhound. He thanked me and got out, leaving his gear in the car. You forgot this, I said, pointing to the duffel. Not mine, he said. Never been in the military, just got out of the hospital. Been in a coma for 2 years after an auto accident. Never served. Well, this one is yours. It has your name on it, I said, handing him a box I knew was full of awards, decorations, and letters of commendation. The box had no military markings, no rank or serial number, nothing like that. Unlike the duffel, which had all of that on it, I had seen the box before. He had it with him, as well as the duffel, back in the Pentagon when he got the Navy Cross. It was a large, brown, heavy manifest-type box, with twine around it, not tied as a Navy man would. You understand? I asked. Yes, sure, he said. Then he picked it up like he had never seen it before. He sort of moved it all around, shook it, looking at the sides as well as the top and bottom. He looked again at the name, and it was his. He shrugged again, and without smiling or saying anything else to me, he turned and walked away. The box held the Navy Cross, at least one silver star, a bunch of purple hearts, and only God and the Department of Defense knew what else he had won in those 2 years. I remembered what he had said to me the day he saved my life, as he carried me from the field and into the slick. I'm just going to forget it ever happened and move on. I guess this was his first step. The man saved my life and my men's lives, and if this was how he wanted to do it, I wasn't going to argue with him. It was the last I ever saw of him, until now. I kept his duffel for almost 5 years, sort of out of respect. Then I gave it to Goodwill after I looked inside to make sure there was nothing embarrassing. There wasn't one personal thing in there. No letters, no pictures, not even photographs of men he had served with. There were no tags on the uniforms, no dog tags. It was as if Phil had never been there, like he never existed. But there was something strange in it. Textbooks. The Army had a program where you could take free courses and get college credit, and the duffel was full of textbooks. History, English, but mostly accounting stuff. You have to remember how it was then. Now you return from a war zone, and there's mandatory time on base, and you get some help adjusting. But every war before then, they just sent you home. World War I, World War IA, Korea, Vietnam. One day you were fighting, watching your friends die, killing to stay alive. The next day, you were back in the world. One day, you settle problems with an enemy by killing him. And then you have to be nice and never get angry enough to kill. You hurt inside, but no one can see it, so everyone thinks you're okay. But you're far from okay. You're hurt, injured, damaged. I've seen stranger things, but that's how a hero is. He does his duty, then leaves it behind to live his life. He would have left his medals there in the car if I hadn't told him to take them. He was done, and he was moving on. I didn't know if he really thought he had been in a coma for 2 years or just made it up. But if it helped him fight the pain, I wasn't going to tell him he was wrong. About then, his steps in John remembered something he had seen years ago. I remember that box, John said. I found it years ago, and Dad told me it was nothing important, and took me out to play catch. When I looked for it again, it wasn't there, but I forgot about it. Maybe he left it. No one will ever know if Roger actually remembered what was in the box and consciously moved it, or if something deep inside him, something that kept him sane and defended him against those old memories, told him to move it without knowing what was in it. If you asked him today, he wouldn't even remember the event. John went downstairs to find it. It never dawned on him that he had used the word Dad instead of Roger. He came back with the box as the president had just finished awarding Roger the Medal of Honor for the second time. Not since Pappy Boyington had a man been awarded the same Medal of Honor twice. The first time Pappy was awarded the medal, it was posthumously, along with a Navy Cross. The second time, President Truman awarded it to him after Pappy was found alive after spending 20 months in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. They thought he was dead, so he got it the first time as a dead man. Pappy always thought that was funny, coming back from the dead to get it again. The president told the story of how he had been in a helicopter on an unscheduled and secret visit to the troops. It was in a jump to one he was publicly on to a close country, when a lucky shot disabled the helicopter engine. The chopper went down, and before his Marines and other helicopters could get down, he was under fire. He and his other advisors and Secret Service agents ran toward a set of buildings as the chopper became the focal point of the attack. There was nothing on it to indicate it was the president, but he became a target as his Secret Service detail surrounded him. This made the attackers think he might be someone important. The president continued to speak. As we were running for cover, we saw Command Sergeant Major Phil attacking the enemy all by himself, at least in the beginning. Then I saw a downed soldier. Phil stopped for a few seconds, gave that person something, and ran toward the enemy. Phil was shooting the enemy with deadly accuracy. Almost every shot hit the target. This allowed the other American soldiers to regroup and start their assault too. Then Phil ran out of ammunition and attacked a man using only his knife. Even at that distance, it was clear the man was a walking bomb. From the way his clothes moved, you could see something attached to his chest. Without regard for himself, but thinking only of others, Phil grabbed the detonator in the man's right hand with his own left hand and killed him with his knife. Then he carried him over to a trench, where the explosion did little harm. The other attackers attempted to kill Phil by shooting him several times so that he would drop the man and the bomb would explode. Phil was shot several times but refused to stop until everyone was safe. But that's not all he did. When we finally reached him, he made a request. The soldier he stopped for is now known as Sergeant Major Phil, but was then Sergeant Major Claw. He asked that he be allowed to marry her before he died, and then requested that I bring him back into the army, so she would have his survivor benefits. Fair is fair. I brought him back in as a command sergeant major and did the fastest marriage ceremony in history. I said, "You take," twice, and getting 2 yeses. They were married by the President of the United States. Now, I understand by the maternity uniform Sergeant Major Gen Phil is wearing that we have 2 more little Phils on the way. That makes 4 now. It is men like Command Sergeant Major Phil who come when their country needs them, and then go back to regular life without mentioning their heroism. That is the backbone of America. We are proud to have him serve with us, and for us. This time, we're not going to let him go. We are keeping him in the Army. He is home. In the audience were his bride's grandparents, one of whom is familiar to many of you, Master Sergeant Strongbear, himself a Medal of Honor recipient. Would you please stand so that we may all honor you? Master Sergeant Strongbear was the man Roger would come to think of as his father-in-law. Only a month after Roger finally came back into the world, he and his wife and children traveled to Montana to meet her relatives on a reservation. While on medical leave, Roger and his bride rejoined in the traditional Blackfoot marriage ceremony. 4 months after giving birth, she became pregnant again. Their children were inducted into the Great Blackfoot Nation. Jen Claw beamed with the news of her pregnancy. She was a Blackfoot bride, a Blackfoot mother, and the wife of a warrior whose battle scars proved his worth to the members of her tribe. To her, each scar was a beautiful reminder of how brave her husband was, and that her great stallion was her man forever. At that time, Roger and his bride had the following discussion. Roger, my love, I worry about you being pregnant again. I cannot give up making love to you, but I am afraid that after this, you will get pregnant again and again. Maybe I should get fixed so that won't happen. Iron Claw, husband, would you make me wedded to a gelding rather than a stallion? We shall not quit making love, and I shall have as many children as the spirit allows. I have a warrior as a husband, and I want the world to see that he is a warrior at home as much as he is away. That was the end of the conversation. There would be no more children after the birth of the second set of twins, also a boy and a girl. These 2 would become members of the Blackfoot Nation. They would actually be born on the reservation, and Roger would be there during the birth to cut the cords and breathe life into them. Other than their mother, the first person whose skin they felt was Roger's. Roger was a doting father and husband. For the next 10 years, the family traveled around the world as part of the military mission. Because of his devotion to his country and his bravery in battle, Roger and his bride were always posted to the same location. Although assigned different duties, they finally retired on the same day. Roger was never again allowed to enter a war zone, despite his attempts to obtain such an assignment. He was a national treasure as far as the Department of Defense was concerned. Their children grew up on military bases all over the world. When the time was right, 2 of them entered West Point, and 2 entered Annapolis, all 4 as a result of presidential appointments. Back in the present, the president continued to speak. Command Sergeant Major Phil, I want to advise you that a sergeant major is a sergeant major, command or not, and your wife has date of rank on you, so you better follow her orders. While everyone laughed and clapped, the formal ceremony ended. The President and First Lady were greeted by many people. After all, it was a political event as much as a ceremony to honor Command Sergeant Major Phil. Meanwhile, John Jr. opened the box. Inside were Roger's dog tags, medals, and citations. They laid them out on the large table. Among them were the Navy Cross and Silver Star, but they were not alone. Inside were a number of Bronze Star medals with small V devices attached, signifying they were awarded for valor in battle. There were Army Commendation Medals, Navy Commendation Medals, and even an Air Force Commendation Medal, all with the V devices attached. It's not unheard of for a service member from one branch to receive a medal from another branch for actions taken in service to that branch. Though it's unusual, there were a number of Purple Hearts. When you received 3, you were supposed to leave the theater. Roger had 6. Some were awarded while he was operating with Navy personnel, others while defending an Air Force base during an assault. Because of this, they never all made it into his 2011 file at the same time. No one realized how many times Roger had been wounded. That accounted for the scars. Some were from bullet wounds, some from explosives, and others from blades in hand-to-hand combat. For whatever reason, Roger chose to say it was from an automobile accident rather than the truth. Maybe he really didn't remember, or maybe the dreams were his way of remembering the horrors of battle. No one will ever know. There was also a good conduct medal, a combat infantryman's badge, and a gold badge with an anchor, eagle, trident, and some kind of pistol, the badge of a Navy SEAL. No orders accompanied this badge, but it was obvious it was the one the Admiral had given Roger that last day. There were also a number of medals awarded by the Republic of Vietnam. Each medal was accompanied by a written citation and the paperwork that led to the recommendation. The General and the Admiral were wrong. The paperwork showed Roger had done more, so much more. There were testimonials from other members of the teams he was on when he received the Silver Star and Navy Cross. The General and Admiral saw only one side of the story, but the other men saw more. By this time, everyone around the table was reading one of the papers and looking at the medals. John Jr. looked at Zoe, and then to the man frequently seen with his young wife and asked, "This is the man whose genes you thought were superior to Roger's?" The last thing in the box was at the bottom, an envelope addressed to my children. John Jr. opened the letter and read it aloud. A letter written by a 20-year-old Roger to his future children. "My dear children, I hope I have children. I am writing this to you on the eve of my leaving the army. I have done some things a civilized man should not do, and just because it was war doesn't make it right. They were things I had to do, but I hurt inside from having to do them. Being young doesn't make it right, but I will try my best to do right from now on. It's never too late to try to do what is right. I'm going to put it all behind me and do my best to forget it ever happened while editing for it too. But before that happens, I want to leave you with some words I hope to live by, and I hope they will have meaning for you. The value of a man or woman is not found in a box, or in words written by someone on paper, or in things you wear to show everyone what you've done. It's in how they live their life day after day. It's in how they treat friends and strangers, but most importantly, how they treat their family. It's how they show love and devotion by always putting their family first, no matter the cost. It's icing on the cake that they love him so much that it doesn't matter how much money he makes or how smart he is, but just because he is who he is. Because of that, every day of his life, he does his best for them, and they do the same for him in return. That is the measure of a person. I hope I have lived up to that for you. May God bless you and keep you, and may he forgive me for what I have done to my fellow human beings in war. May he never have to forgive you for what you do because you live a just, upright, and moral life as a good human being, a loving parent, and a faithful spouse. Your loving father, Roger." John Jr. and his half-sisters were crying when the letter was finished. "I'm finished here. Anyone coming with me?" John asked, as he carefully picked up all the papers and documents and put them back into the box in the order they had originally been. His sisters got up and walked out the door with him. His wife stayed behind. 3 days later, a box was delivered to the Pentagon, addressed to Command Sergeant Major Phil. Inside the outer box was a brown box tied with twine. It was duly delivered, unopened, to Command Sergeant Major Phil. Inside were the contents it originally contained and a brief typed note found in an envelope under the twine, but not inside the box. "This is not for us. We wish to God it was, but it isn't." The letter was unsigned, but Roger Phil knew who it was from. 4 months later, John was single, and he, Paula, and Billy had new names. "We can do better, be better this time. We can be like Dad wanted, like he showed us," John said to his sisters as they all slowly walked off together. Meanwhile, Roger. It was a few months after I got my original awards back that I showed Strong Bear the letter. We were all sitting around the fire on a warm summer day. There were probably 50 or more of us. It was a common meal, and everyone was there to enjoy the evening. Jen Claw was there, looking beautiful as ever, with our children. I love to call her that. She was due soon. Her pride in me was obvious, as was her grandmother's and Strong Bear's. My love for her showed in her being pregnant again, and our children. I showed Strong Bear the letter I wrote as a child to my children. He read it, smiled, and passed it around. I was a little taken aback that such a personal letter would be shared without my permission, but my surprise was even greater when it came back to him. Much to my chagrin, he tossed it into the fire. "Words on paper mean nothing," he said. "You wrote that yourself. Show your children yourself. Show them by how you live your life. You already know that." He was right, of course. He always was. I would come to find out. And for the next 30 years, Jen Claw and I did just that. And in case you were wondering about Zoe, she didn't live long after all of this came out. A year or so later, someone sent her videos of her lovers talking about her and what they really thought of her. They talked about how they manipulated her into having children with them and then used those children. It was posted on the internet, and copies were sent to all of the neighbors. Zoe took her own life. When she was found, she was holding one picture. It was of Roger, the children, and herself at some amusement park. Everyone was smiling and laughing, looking happy. No one knows where she got the picture or even who took it, but it was buried with her. Only 2 people solemnly followed the casket to the grave after the service. They were the only ones to attend. The guest sheet simply listed them as Gray Stallion and Iron Claw. A few weeks later, videos surfaced online showing the activities of the 19 swingers, now 18, involving their children, made with Zoe. The group had been recording their actions for years, and now they were out. The last part of every recording was them talking about Zoe and including a picture of her body, and the autopsy report listing the cause of death as suicide by poison. The group broke up. They were ostracized in their hometown. Many moved away, and the rest became reclusive. Those videos seemed to follow them wherever they went. No one knows who sent the videos, who posted them, or who was sending them to the new neighbors of the swingers, whose quest for personal pleasure destroyed so many innocent lives. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.